and there's clearly a huge and deepening reliance on Russian power and capital to support kind of the aims of Russian expansion into the EU. So when we look at the countries across Eastern Europe, I think many consider Georgia to be a case of we did sort of too little, too late in terms of supporting truly independent journalism. Even when US aid was around, a few million a year is, and not all of that going directly into the reporting budgets of media organizations was insufficient.
How has that announced closure of US aid impacted your work, particularly at the International Fund?
Yeah, so USAID was our biggest donor. And last month at the Paris Peace Forum, we secured an additional 10 million euro commitment from France. Once we receive that, France will be the biggest donor to the fund over time. But still, we did lose an enormous source of both capital and kind of ongoing budgetary support for the fund. That's made fundraising, and support for our grantees particularly difficult. And many of them have both lost direct support or support that was coming from the US government, and we've also had to cut back on our support as well. We've honoured all existing grant commitments, and we've prioritised Eastern Europe in our grant making, given some of the geopolitical threats and given how reliant they were on US aid. But unfortunately, there are not many countries in the world right now that are increasing their support for media. I think France is an exception, despite their budget cuts and their foreign aid cuts as well. They have increased their support. Around 24 million overall that they've supported us with when we get this new commitment, but very other few countries around Europe are doing this.
Thank you. And how will the proposed cuts to the UK overseas development grants impact media freedoms globally? So we've talked about the US cuts. What's your assessment of the UK reduction?
I think they're very concerning. If you look at OECD data, our analysis is that the UK, since 2019, since the Global Media Freedom Conference that was hosted here, the UK has already cut $30 million of funding in terms of foreign aid spend on media. And any further cuts, especially given the broader geopolitical environment, will be tremendously damaging to the sector. The UK has historically been one of the leaders of supporting media freedom and journalism, as evidenced by the creation of the Media Freedom Coalition. There are a couple of other states, including the Nordic countries, which do this, but really, I think the UK's role is pretty unique, and further cuts here would. I'm not sure which other countries could even begin to step up.
Do you have any further breakdown of the 30 million of cuts, which were the main countries which UK was focusing its support in terms of media freedom?
I'm looking at the OECD tracker over that time. I'm not sure I actually have that data here, but I could write in there.
That would be very helpful. So you talked at the beginning about the 20 donors have come together in a coalition. Is that in response to these cuts, to bring together other countries that are prepared to do that funding, to bridge some of the gap? And what will be the remaining gaps, do you think, in any particular countries that will be? You've highlighted Eastern Europe as where your funding priorities are. Is that where you're seeing the main gaps?
Yeah, so we created the International Fund in 2022, which is obviously long before the current US administration or the cutting of US aid. We did it then because we felt that we needed to radically increase the amount of funding available for journalism. We saw, the economic threats of journalism to have existed for 20 years. They've accelerated recently. The political threats have certainly accelerated in the last 10 years. And so even before USAID, we saw a huge need to increase the amount of funding. Our goal then was to go from 0.3% of foreign aid to about 1% of foreign aid, which would have introduced an extra $1 billion or so of funding for journalism globally. Unfortunately, we're going the other way. We're going the other way. And so, the cuts since the beginning of the year have created an additional $200 million shortfall versus this time last year. And realistically, I don't really see how that gap is going to be covered through OECD states. There are countries like Spain, Qatar also, have taken more of an active role in trying to support journalism and democracy. But it won't be to that extent. And so, I think we're relying on countries who have a track record of doing this, of supporting both multilateralism and supporting journalism and democracy, to, even if they can't to cover that gap, to do what they can in terms of financial support to media, and also become political champions to ensure that countries that haven't historically supported these sectors to step in, or even companies that haven't historically supported these sectors to step in, because there is a huge need for the private sector to get involved. And our funding coalition is pretty diverse. We have countries like Taiwan, New Zealand, Estonia, who financially supported the fund. Ghana, I mentioned last month, made a financial commitment last month. And so we're looking at really expanding the kind of typical multilateral actors, or those who've supported multilateralism, to a much broader base, both because we need a broader coalition right now, because the threats are so vivid, but also because of the financial constraints facing each individual state.
I'll just check, Mr. Lalwani, that the 30 billion cuts, was that £30 million? Or
was dollars, because the OECD counts in dollars. Yeah.
Right, got it. And so you've offered to write to us about the effects of those UK cuts on media freedom in recipient countries. And I should add, if there's anything else that you didn't cover today that you feel that you should that you'd like to give evidence to the committee on, then please just add that in writing as well. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Mr. Lalwani, for giving us evidence today. For giving us evidence today.
अरे आ गया नहीं होगा तो बहुत सामने आ देखो मेरे पास अभी 3 लॉगिंग है बाद अगर 5 GB लड़ाई नहीं लड़ाई में तो जब 5 मिनट आता है अलग अलग स्टार्ट करना इसका हम बनाना है इसका फॉलोइंग होगा हाँ दूसरा हो सकता है हम बना दो उसको इसको बस लगाना है तो अपलोड करोगे ये वो अपलोड हुआ है उसको हम बस लगा रहे हाँ करवा देंगे अच्छा मेरे ऊपर इसको पहले ही लग गया था उसमें इंफोग्राफ ये तो कुछ नहीं किया अभी तक हो गए जब से लाइट शीट करना स्टार्ट कर दें वो
Yes, it's like that.
Or at a larger digest. नहीं देता है बिस्किट दे देता है जब हमें फंक्शन पे पटला तो देता है वो तो ला देता था बस ना
और भी तो
हो गया भैया
It's the last day of the month. You could be scrambling to hit quota, or not. Sell smarter and relax harder with Apollo.io, the only all-in-one sales platform with everything you need to find leads, get in touch, manage meetings, and close deals. All in one place. So you can put your sales on autopilot and get back to whatever this is. Sign up for free at Apollo.io, the only sales tool you'll ever need.
Jamie, we were talking about the fact that you have lent into technology over the last decade, billions of dollars invested across the business. When it comes to AI, which parts of the JP Morgan business are going to be most transformed by AI?
Yeah, so we've been doing AI since 2012. So people think it's like a new thing. Gen AI is kind of new, but not all of AI. We have 2,000 people doing it. Spend $2 billion a year on it. It affects everything: risk, fraud, marketing, idea generation, customer service, and it's kind of the tip of the iceberg. And so, we're deploying it. Every time we meet as a business, we ask, what are you doing in AI? What are you doing to serve your people? Why can you do better? What is somebody else doing? So we're freely deploying it, and safely. We have a lot of rules and regulations in place for our own data and how we use it, et cetera.
Is it having a material impact on revenues for JP Morgan? If not now, then when?
So we have shown that for $2 billion of expense, we have about $2 billion of benefit. Some we actually can do real detail. We did this, we reduced headcount, we saved this time and money, we reduced errors. Some you can't. It's just improved service, something like that. It's like almost worthless to say what's the NPV, but we know about $2 billion of actual cost saves. And like I said, I think it's the tip of the iceberg. We're getting better and better at it. We know how to do it. As the managers learn how to do it, they're asking more questions. Why can't it do X and why can't it do Y? And then I don't have my phone here, we have a suite, an LLM suite on internal data to do research and summarize reports and scan contracts and do things like that. 150,000 people a week use it, so it's quite productive.
More and more of your employees are using the agentic AI across JP Morgan.
Our own LLM, and agentic is just starting. But that will be deployed over time too. But it's also being used for coding. I mean, it's being used quite broadly now, and like I said, part of it is getting your mind working on how you're going to use this thing. And so our managers and leaders have to do it.
If you look out 5 years, are there more jobs in banking as a result of AI or fewer?
I think people shouldn't put their head in the sand. It is going to affect jobs. So think of every application, every service you do, well, you'll be using AI, some to enhance it, some of it'll be you doing the same job, you're doing a better job at it. There will be jobs that it eliminates. But you're better off being way ahead of the curve and retraining people. So we retrain and redeploy a lot of people. So for JP Morgan, if we're successful, we'll have more jobs. But there'll probably be less jobs in certain functions.
When you look at the spend on AI, infrastructure, chips, OpenAI, it's not making a profit, loss-making, deals of about $1 trillion this year, the hyperscalers, the spend there. What is your reaction when you see those numbers crossing? Are you comfortable with that kind of spend on the infrastructure around AI?
It's a lot. I'm not sure it's all ever going to be totally spent. I think when you look at big tech, like tech that happens like this, and you go look at cars, you look at television, you look at internet, big money's got spent. There are a lot of losers, a lot of winners. In total, it was productive. So even take the internet bubble. Remember that blew up, and the amount of people. You and I could probably name 100 companies that were worth $50 billion and disappeared. But out of it came Facebook, YouTube, Google. So there will be real big companies, real big success. It will work in spite of the fact that not everyone who invests in it is going to have a great investment return.
And of course, those investments are part of what has powered this bull market in stocks. And on Sunday, it'll be 3 years of that bull market. Where do you think we are in that bull market? Is there any complacency there? Is it underpinned by rational factors? Is there more momentum?
Yeah, look, we're in a bull market. It's been clear. Asset prices are high, credit spreads are low, consumer's still okay, the consumer has jobs. Remember, jobs are what usually starts to force people to cut back and change things, and consumers spend less and companies cut back. So far, so good. There are a lot of issues out there that the economy's got to deal with, from all the geopolitical stuff. Maybe they'll sort out well. What's going to happen to inflation? I'm a little more nervous about inflation not coming down like people expect. That might be a surprise. On the other hand, there's a lot of spending. There's a lot of government spending, which is inflationary too, by the way. And so, look, I don't know. I hope for the best, plan for the worst.
And you're not worried about a recession in 2026 for the US? You've made that clear.
I think it could happen in 2026. I'm not worried about it as a different statement. We'll deal with it. We'll serve our clients. We'll navigate through it. A lot of us have been through them before. You don't wish it because certain people get hurt, but it could happen in 2026.
We're still, of course, in the US government shutdown.
But I do think there are positives. Like deregulation is a real positive, which also helps animal spirits as a positive. And in the one big beautiful bill, there's also more stimulus that has positives for the economy, but maybe negatives for inflation. So how it all sorts out, we'll see.
Markets are looking through the US government shutdown. Is there a period of time, if this shutdown continues, where markets start to wake up and become concerned?
I don't think so. I don't like shutdowns. I think it's just a bad idea, and I don't care what the Democrats, Republicans say. It's a bad idea. It's not a way to run a railroad. I don't think it's critical. We've had, I forgot the number, 4 or 5 or 6. One went for 35 days. I'm not sure anyone really affected the economy and the market in a real way.
You mentioned inflation. You said you're a little bit more concerned about inflation than maybe some others. Markets pricing in about 100 basis points of cuts between now and this time next year from the Fed. Does that therefore seem reasonable to you, or markets are over their skis in pricing?
I think markets have to make a forecast. I want to point out that forecasts have almost always been wrong, and the Fed's been wrong too. So it isn't like their forecast is going to be accurate. If inflation goes up, starts ticking up for whatever reason, and it might, it's going to be hard to do 100 points. They might do some, and then they have the battle, the give and take of if unemployment starts going up, well, obviously they're going to do some. So we'll see.
You've long talked about geopolitics as being a risk factor. We're seeing gold at $4,000. We're seeing Bitcoin at record highs. The dollar, though, year to date, down about 8% on the Bloomberg Dollar Index. Are you seeing structural shifts out of the US dollar, and is that a sustained theme?
A little bit, but again, I wouldn't have heartburn over it. The dollar did well for a long time. If you own U.S. stocks, so foreigners own something like $35 trillion of U.S. stocks and bonds, and because the stock market's gone up, your allocation to the U.S. has gone up. I think it's perfectly reasonable for investment committees in Europe and around the world to cut back a little bit of their equity ownership. We've also seen people changing their hedge ratios and stuff like that. So it may just be a rational adjustment to, I don't expect a stronger dollar, the tariffs has this effect. But it's still, if you look at America, it's still the greatest place in the world to invest in the long term.
And deal making seems to be picking up. And of course, JP Morgan played a significant role in the takeover, the take private of EA, $20 billion in financing provided by JP Morgan. Is that a marker in the sand? Is that a one-off as a deal of that type? Or is it a sign of more competition between, frankly, the banks and private credit?
Well, we're agnostic about private credit. So there may be competition or not. We want our customers to do what's in their interest. We offer both, and we did that whole deal in 11 days. And we didn't do it that way to make a point to private credit. If they said do it differently, we could have done it differently too. And so, but there's a lot of merger talk. There's a lot of firepower. There's a lot of tech. We had a bunch of IPOs in the U.S. And I know there's only been a handful here. The tech world is still doing quite well. The 800 companies here. I think it was 400 last year. We now have 500 bankers coming. The innovation economy globally around the world, including we've added like 50 alone here. So. Look, I'm a long-term optimist. I do think asset prices are high, credit spreads are low, and you should take that in consideration how you think about the future.
When we talk about credit and you talk about debt, I'm thinking of some data, in fact, that JP Morgan put out on auto loans. Biggest losses in the most recent months, I think since March of 2020. Is that idiosyncratic to auto loans in the US, or are you seeing other weak links being stressed?
I think there were one or two frauds, which I won't go through, but in general, consumer credit was so good, it's basically, most of that's just normalizing. For both credit card, but subprime order is a little bit worse than normalizing. It doesn't look like it's getting worse from here, but it might. But a lot of that, if you look at the history of credit for consumers, it's employment. It's when employment or home prices go way down, which we don't maybe not expect, that drives credit.
The administration is talking about possibly changing the requirement around quarterly earnings. And you've talked about this, you've written about this with Warren Buffett around the guidance part of earnings and quarterly guidance. Would you welcome a change like that? And would it mean a change at JP Morgan in terms of how often you update
I would welcome it. We still probably update investors quarterly with much less stuff, and we just be very transparent. I think the bigger problem wasn't just reporting quarterly, it was forecasting where CEOs get their back up against the wall, they have to meet these things, earnings, and they start doing dumb stuff to meet earnings, and that kind of public pressure. I think it's a smaller part of a much bigger problem. We've gone from 8,000 public companies in 1996 to like 4,000 today. And that, I'm not sure that's good. We drive companies out of it. We have cookie cutter governance. Some activists are good, but they're activists. There's litigation. There's cookie cutter compensation. There's very expensive listing. There's disclosure rules, which you've heard about them here. I mean, endless rules, and that it makes it hard for a small company to go public. So I think, and they're trying to do that here, have an active small company going public. That's what we all need. And create an equity culture, which Rachel Reeves was trying to do here. And I think they're doing a good job reducing regulations, trying to make it easier to do business, and reducing regulation in banks, but also in business in general. You want an active market, and we've kind of crushed it. And because the research laws and MiFID and disclosure requirements. So if I was a regulator, I would take a step back and look at the whole system and say, how can we improve it and make it safer? And look at it holistically as opposed to, just everything's like a one-off conversation.
Interview security, a new era defined by fairness, trust, integrity. But across the digital frontier, new threats emerge. Synthetic candidates, deepfakes, cloned voices, AI-written answers challenge everything we value. The risk is real. Misrepresentation, compliance failures, erosion of trust. Our future is at stake. Others automate, we secure, we measure, we verify, we protect. For us, security isn't a feature, it's the standard. This is about people, about opportunity, about truth. Fairness and integrity at scale. Join the movement. Confront the synthetic candidate era together. Defend trust in hiring. Join us at Interview Security Virtual Summit 2025.
I need to talk to you about some other changes that the Trump administration has taken. You are a champion of capitalism and free market capitalism.
Yeah.
So when you see stakes taken by the administration, or the US government, let's put it that way, in terms of Intel, golden share for US Steel, investments in a lithium mine producer, how does that sit with you?
Yeah. So the first thing is there are legitimate complaints around trade. So just take that first. Some are around just unfair trade. It's unfair to use, it's not just tariffs, it's surpluses, it's capital, it's quotas, it's just, it's the non-tariff barriers. And then there's national security related. So I think in national security, you have to take some special thing. I call it industrial policy, but it's got to be done right. It's got to come with permitting, no virtual signaling. And so like the deal that was done for MP, I thought they did a very smart thing. They're giving MP, which we were part of banking, does rare earth magnets, because they're going to have a long-term contract with the government, it gives them a chance to survive, to get through it. They call it the Valley of Death. And they bought a piece they're going to do that. So I thought that was really well done. I'm not going to comment all of them. I think you have to be very careful when you get involved in that kind of stuff. Why are you doing it? What's the long-term benefit? And then, of course, if Democrats get in power, they're going to do even more of it. So I would be very cautious about how you go about that. I do think they need to do more. You cannot do certain things in the United States. You think a company's going to do it, they'll be bankrupt in 7 months. They either need free land, cheaper financing, and maybe the most important thing is long-term purchase agreements with defense or companies or something that gives them a real chance to build a business.
You touched on the fact, look, we're here in the UK. The Chancellor was here. She addressed the summit. She addressed the conference. She's making those changes. Is the UK doing enough? There are going to be potentially some changes when it comes to listings. They may be announced in the budget in November. Is enough being done to make the UK, to make London an attractive listing destination again?
Well, first of all, the summit here, it's a wonderful city. It's a melting pot. The brain power is extraordinary. And I'm talking about not just financial, but lawyers and technology, media. It's unbelievable. It's a huge benefit to UK, though I'm not sure the rest of the UK appreciates that much. And they're saying the right things. They're deregulating. It's not just banks, but business in general, reducing red tape. I call it blue tape now. They're reducing red tape, blue tape. They're trying to consolidate the pension and savings schemes, which I think is very smart. Have a little more of an equity risk culture. Not to lose money, but to take a little more risk. And maybe some of these tech companies here. Yeah, I applaud everything they're doing. I know the public here doesn't applaud as much as I do, but they have to keep going.
H-1B visas in the US, talking about attracting talent, $100,000. Is that a barrier to the US tech sector? Are you concerned about that?
No, I'm not. Again, I could harp on it. It's 600,000 employees. That's it. We have 160 million people working. And I do think, these things happen. I didn't like it when I first started. I still don't particularly like it, but you know what? It was being abused. We did the analysis and the work. It was not supposed to be to bring cheaper workers here to make more money for your company. It was meant to bring very talented people in you don't necessarily have for your company. And we may have made some mistakes, but let's just fix the system. I was with the president once, and he said more merit-based, more merit-based. In fact, I heard him say we should stamp a green card in every person in this country who went to university or advanced degrees and have them stay here and build their career here. That would be my belief. I want them to go back to that, not make it harder to be or make it easier for real merit-based.
You speak to the president every week?
No.
Okay.
I've spoken to him a couple of times.
Jamie Dunn, Chairman, CEO, JP Morgan. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it.
Your email is your first online impression. Make it count. With GoDaddy Email, you get a professional address that matches your domain. It builds trust, boosts credibility, and helps grow your brand. Setup is quick, and your inbox is protected with built-in security. And if you ever need help, we are just a call away. Start building your brand, one email at a time.
This is Akshay from Mumbai. He wants to start selling online. He just needs a domain name, akshayshop.in. Perfect. But wait, Akshay from Delhi wants it too. And Akshay from Bangalore. Speed matters, so be the fastest. Register your domain name before anyone else. Claim it today at hostinger.com/in.
take for you to drop or lower your tariffs on Canadian sectors, including aluminum and steel?
Well, we're going to be talking about that with the Prime Minister. We'll be talking about tariffs. We'll be talking about a lot of that, but that's for a little bit later on. I want to just acknowledge our great ambassador. Is he doing a good job?
He's doing a good job.
Otherwise, I'll get him out of there so fast. No, you have a good
Is it the White House's position that furloughed workers should be paid for their back pay?
I would say it depends on who we're talking about. I can tell you this, the Democrats have put a lot of people in great risk and jeopardy, but it really depends on who you're talking about. But for the most part, we're going to take care of our people. There are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of, and we'll take care of them in a different way. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. President, in your opinion, why has Canada and the United States failed to reach an agreement up until now?
Well, it's a complicated agreement, more complicated maybe than any other agreement we have on trade, because, we have natural conflict. We also have mutual love. We have great love for each other. I love this. I love Canada and the people of Canada. And Mark feels the same way about here. The problem we have is that they want a car company and I want a car company, meaning the U.S. wants a car company. And they want steel and we want steel. So in other countries, they're very far away. And there's no problem. You can compete and you can do. We don't like to compete because we sort of hurt each other when we compete. And so we have a natural conflict. It's a natural business conflict. Nothing wrong with it. And I think we've come a long way over the last few months, actually, in terms of that relationship. So when it comes to trade, the United States was always giving everything. They gave everything to Canada. They would let car companies leave here and go to Canada. But that hurts the United States. And, other presidents didn't see that. They weren't business oriented. They might have been good politicians in some cases, not in all cases. They were bad at both. But it's a very natural conflict, and it's something that we're working on.
Offered a lot of compromise this summer. Are you willing today to offer some compromise to Canada, maybe on steel, on aluminum?
Well, we've made compromise, and we've made some compromise even on steel. But we have the same basic authority and the same basic. This could be also a little bit of a conflict with other countries all over the world on steel, because we want to make our own steel. We don't want to bring steel in for the most part, but we will bring it in, and we do bring it in. We continue to bring it in from Canada, but there is a tariff to pay, and I think that would be a normal thing to say. But we've come a long way. I think, Howard, we can truly say. Do you want to make a comment on that?
Well, I think the opportunity to work together, but as you said, there's conflict. Why do we make cars in Canada? You've called that out, and you've addressed that. So there are places we should work together, and there are places that we have natural conflict.
It's a tough situation because we want to make our cars here. At the same time, we want Canada to do well making cars. So we're working on formulas, and I think we'll get there.
Canadians are refusing to go to the U.S. The numbers are down like 23% in the first 7 months of the year. What do you say to Canadians that don't want to go to the U.S. now because of your 51st state talk, because of the trade war, the tariffs?
Yeah. Well, I understand that. Look, I understand that. And Americans don't want to buy cars that are made in Canada. We have the same conflict. So there isn't, it's something that will get worked out. There's still great love between the two countries, but, American people want product here. They want to make it here. Detroit was emptied out and moved to Canada, moved to Mexico, moved to other places, not just Canada. And now they're all moving back, they're moving back. We have, right now, I was just telling Mark, we have 17 trillion, but it's really much higher. That was as of a couple of months ago. We have over $17 trillion being invested now in the United States. As an example, Biden, he was the worst president we've ever had, but they had less than 1 trillion in 4 years. We have more than 17 trillion in 8 months. 8 months. And I think that number is going to be $22 trillion. There's never been anything like that in the history of the world for any country, not even close. If you did 1 trillion in a year, that's pretty good. we're going to do over 20. And it's coming in with AI, it's coming in with auto plants. You know, we're building auto plants, a lot of auto plants in the U.S. It's coming in for a lot of reasons. It's coming in because of the fact, I think the November 5th election was a big factor, and I think the tariffs are a big factor. And again, we want Canada to do great, but you know, there's a point at which we also want the same business. We're competing for the same business. That's the problem. That's why I keep mentioning one way to solve that problem is a very easy way, but we're competing for the same business. He wants to make cars, we want to make cars, and we're in competition. And the advantage we have is we have this massive market. So it's a, you know, it's quite an advantage.
Mr. President, can we talk about Berlin for a second? Are you planning to invoke the Insurrection Act? And that would be, a very long-standing war of law that's been on the books.
Yeah, well, it's been invoked before, as you know. If you look at Chicago, Chicago's a great city where there's a lot of crime. And if the governor can't do the job, we'll do the job. It's all very simple. They probably had 50 murders in Chicago over the last 5, 6, 7 months. Many people were shot. And then the governor gets up and he says, well, we can handle it. They can't handle it. They don't know what they're doing. The mayor is grossly incompetent. He's at a 4% approval rating in Chicago. He's at a 4%, lowest approval rating, lower than even de Blasio had, which is hard to believe in New York. I thought de Blasio would always maintain that record, but the Chicago guy is even lower. So I think that...
Looking to take the next step in your career? Then you have to get this AWS course on Udemy. It gets you up to date on the latest tools and techniques so you can learn AWS fundamentals and pass your exam. Take this course at your own pace, on your commute, after work. So get this course now.
हो गया हम देखें
We want safe cities. If you look at D.C., you would right now, Mark, you could go out, take your family out to dinner, you could walk right down the middle of the street. There is no crime in D.C. When I got here, this place was a raging hellhole where people would come from Canada, people would come from other places and end up getting shot. Nobody's being shot. The National Guard's been unbelievable. I mean, they are strong, tough guys. You know, we won something at the Supreme Court, which is a big deal, merit. Everything now in this country is merit-based. I didn't think I'd ever see it again. And we have our soldiers are merit-based too, and they're central casting. And they walk through that town, and I'll tell you what, this place is safe. It's beautiful. Now we're in Memphis, and the same thing's happening. You're getting the reports. The bad guys are saying, we don't want anything to do with this. And we're removing many people. In D.C., we took out 1,700 career criminals and sent them back to the countries from which they came, mostly led out by Biden and his people that had an open border policy. And, you know, Canada, you suffered because of that, too, because they'd come here and they'd go into Canada also. So we're like a buffer for that in terms of Canada suffered greatly by Biden and the open border, the policy of open border, totally unchecked, totally unvetted. And these people were, you know, if you got 5%, 2%, now you were getting a lot of bad people. And we now have a closed border. Yep. You've done well. Yep. We have a closed border, and it's a really closed border. In fact, for 4 months, I don't even know if this is possible, but the figures were released. 0 people were able to come into the United States from the southern border. 0. And as you know, we've taken a very hard stand on drugs. This is also benefiting you. A lot of we call them the water drugs, the drugs that come in through water. They're not coming. There are no boats anymore. Frankly, there are no fishing boats. There's no boats out there, period. If you want to know the truth, we're saying, does anybody go fishing anymore? The fact is, we knocked out, probably saved at least 100,000 lives, American lives, Canadian lives, by taking out all those boats coming in. So it's, and now they don't come in that way anymore. Now they'll come in other ways, and we're not going to allow that either. So we've done a great job on that. But on crime, Chicago's a great city, but you can't be a great city if you have murders and if you have a lot of problems, and they do. And they have an incompetent policy, just like they had open border policy, anybody could come in. They came in from prisons, they came in from mental institutions, drug dealers, they came in from all over the place, and we don't have that anymore. This country is becoming we're a very strong country. Look, financially speaking, I would say that because of the tariffs, because of the election, because of the policy, because of the great, big, beautiful deal, it's what I added the word great because it really is. It's the biggest bill ever passed in the history of our country. We don't need another bill. It's the biggest tax cuts, I mean, when you think no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime for the people. But far beyond that, what it does is incentivizes auto plants and AI and all of the things that nobody's ever passed a bill like. We don't need another bill. We don't need any more bills. I said, let's get it all at once. I was greatly helped by our Speaker, Mike Johnson, and by the Senate. I'll tell you what, John Thune's been, both of those guys have been incredible. And we got a bill passed that I said, let's see if we can get it all done. Because these Democrats are like insurrectionists, okay? They're so bad for our country. Their policy is so bad for our country. I said, let's see if we can get it all done and everybody said it's not doable. Because it's the biggest bill ever